Tonight, America's staring directly into the kind of chaos that we were told could never happen again. A conservative leader assassinated, a nation on edge, and now Kash Patel, Donald Trump's former top federal investigator, has finally broken his silence, and what he just revealed, this changes everything. Now, for weeks, questions have been swirling around. Did the FBI mismanage key evidence? Why were digital fingerprints, text messages, and online warnings ignored? And why did radical online subculture seem to know something big was coming before Charlie Kirk was even targeted? Well, tonight, Kash Patel steps in and he blows the doors wide open, exposing a crisis inside federal law enforcement that even Candace Owens warned about, but was mocked for until now. Because according to Patel, the investigation wasn't just delicate, it was fractured. State authorities were leading while federal agencies were scrambling in the background. Critical leads were passed back and forth, and threats against conservatives were accelerating online. And extremist groups, some hiding behind identity politics, openly celebrated the assassination. I know, it's crazy. Drop a crazy down below if you think that's wild, that some people would actually assassinate, or that some people would celebrate an assassination. Well, here's the part that nobody wants to talk about. This wasn't an isolated attack. This was a signal, folks. A signal that conservatives were being hunted online, while the agencies meant to protect them were losing control. So tonight, we're going to go ahead and break down exactly what Kash Patel's revelations are, the cover-ups, the warnings, and most importantly, the radical networks that are still hiding behind the chaos right now. Buckle up. This is far from over. Hit the like button, subscribe. Now, let's get into what Kash Patel actually exposed, because this is where the cracks turn in the canyons, okay? When Patel was asked whether the FBI had the right suspect, he didn't hesitate. He said yes. But when asked if the suspect acted alone, suddenly the answers weren't crisp. Suddenly the words shifted into something softer, something more careful. He repeated phrases like delicate, balance, supporting role, ongoing leads, jurisdictional boundaries. That's not language of confidence. That's the language of an agency that's trying not to step on a landmine. Now remember, Patel said that the FBI was working in support of Utah authorities. Support for the assassination of one of the most influential conservative voices in America? Like, why isn't the FBI leading this thing? Why does Kash Patel sound like he's tiptoeing through a political minefield instead of commanding an investigation? And then, of course, there's his emphasis on not screwing up the case twice, right? Now, that phrasing alone signals internal doubt, hesitation, and even the possibility that key evidence may have been already mishandled or filtered before the public ever saw it. Pay attention to that, guys. The more Kash Patel spoke, the more obvious it became. This investigation has holes that the public can see, holes that the FBI is desperately trying to cover up on and paper over. And this brings us directly to Candace Owens, because like it or not, Candace Owens' warnings are looking a whole lot less theoretical and a whole lot more prophetic. Now, Candace didn't just say that she felt unsafe. She said that she received credible death threats. Credible international death threats and connected chatter from France to her own safety and to Charlie Kirk's assassination. So when she first raised the alarm, she was mocked, dismissed, called dramatic. But Patel's response, he didn't dismiss anything. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't say it was impossible. What he did say is that any American who receives a death threat, we investigate fully. He said that they were already looking into it. He said they wouldn't turn their eye away. Now, that alone validated the fear millions of conservatives already felt, that high-profile voices on the right are being systemically targeted and federal agencies are struggling or refusing to keep up. And so Candace Owens warned that something was deeply wrong inside these institutions. She warned that conservatives were being left exposed while bureaucrats downplayed the threats. She warned that investigators were missing the bigger picture. Well, tonight, her warning doesn't look exaggerated. In fact, it looks rather accurate. It looks timely, and it looks confirmed. Now, some people look at everything that's happening in the economy, the instability, the distrust in our institutions, and they throw their hands up and pretty much say that there's nothing I can do. Have you ever thought that to yourself? But others, the ones who refuse to lose, take action before the storm hits. This is who Noble Gold Investments is for. And that's exactly why I partner with them. They help everyday Americans protect their savings with physical gold and silver held in their name. No gimmicks, no confusion, real assets you control. And when people finally see how simple it is, they almost always say, yeah, that just makes sense. This is why thousands are calling 877-646-5347 or visiting ronyatesgold.com to get their free wealth protection kit, because in uncertain times, the winners are the ones who act early. And if you're the kind of person who refuses to lose, you already know what your next move is. And so now Kash Patel tried to draw a line between the rumors and the reality, but in doing so, he revealed something far more unsettling. The system itself is under extreme strain. Now, listen to the exact phrases that he just kept falling back on: delicate balance, ongoing investigation, supporting role, working with local prosecutors. Those weren't throwaway words. That's crisis language, guys. That is the vocabulary of an agency that's not fully in control. And when a federal agency, especially the FBI, starts talking like a subordinate instead of a lead investigator, it tells the public everything that they need to know. The truth is simple. The FBI isn't steering the ship, it's reacting to it. And Patel even admitted himself, emphasizing the Utah authorities were driving major decisions. Meanwhile, the FBI was waiting for instructions, waiting for leads, waiting for permission to act. That's not what federal power looks like, guys. Even more concerning, Kash Patel said that they are still fielding new leads, still chasing digital trails, still unsure of the full scope. So if this case was as open and shut as some people claim, the FBI wouldn't be scrambling months later, would they? Now, Patel tried to calm the narrative, but the hesitation in his voice did the exact opposite. It confirmed the public suspicion. This investigation is far from airtight. And so here's the part that nobody wants to admit publicly. The reason that this entire situation exploded online, the reason why millions doubted the official story from day one, the FBI no longer has the trust of the American conservative, period. Do you trust the FBI if you're watching this show right now? This didn't start with Charlie Kirk. This didn't even start with Candace Owens. This collapse of trust has been building for years, fueled by whistleblowers and politicized investigations, botched surveillance operations, leaked memos, targeting parents, and endless mistakes that almost always, if not always, seem to land hardest on conservatives. So when Patel avoids specifics or emphasizes caution or insists that the system is doing its best, the public doesn't really hear reassurance. What they hear more is more like deja vu. You know what I'm saying? They hear James Comey. They hear Russiagate. They hear the same script that they've been using over and over and over to cover political bias year after year. And so this is why this case hit like a bomb. A conservative political figure assassinated, a federal agency with a history of selective enforcement, online clues ignored, threats dismissed, key evidence questioned. Even if the FBI did everything right in this case, and that is a big, huge if, they've already lost the benefit of the doubt. And when trust collapses, every hesitation looks like a cover-up. Every gap looks intentional, and every delay looks suspicious. So now this is where things take a darker turn, because Patel just confirmed something that the media refused to touch. For weeks, the shooter wasn't operating in a vacuum. According to Patel, investigators uncovered connections between Tyler Robinson and an online subculture steeped in ideological extremism. Not mainstream politics, but a fringe, hyper-radicalized corner of the internet where identity, resentment, and violence intersect. And it gets even worse than that. There were posts before the assassination. I'm talking about posts from individuals within this subculture saying things like, something big is going to happen. And after Charlie Kirk was murdered, they followed it with, and there it is. That's not a coincidence. That is not random. That is not the behavior of people who were shocked by tragedy. That's foreknowledge. Or at the very least, it's celebration of violence that they expected to happen. Patel admitted that the FBI is still parsing communications between Robinson and individuals that are connected to this community, including someone that he was in relationship with. That alone opens a new line of inquiry. Was the shooter encouraged, influenced, pushed, or was he signaling his plan to people who already shared his ideology? Now, none of this proves coordination, but it absolutely destroys the narrative of a lone, directionless actor. And that is why this story isn't fading. It's escalating. So now we need to talk about this digital trail, because if you follow the evidence that Patel acknowledged, you find this roadmap that raises more questions than it answers. Investigators tracked Robinson through Google Map searches, location pings, and geofencing data. This is showing that he was in the area before the shooting. Now remember, he lived like nearly 200 miles away. There is no reason for him to even be there. There's no event, There's no appointment. There's no connection. Yet his digital activity shows preparation, movement patterns, route searches, timestamps that align with the assassination window. The affidavit even details him pulling up local locations, scanning the area, waiting. This wasn't spontaneous rage. This was surveillance. So here's the chilling part. Everything that we know came from electronic evidence. Evidence that the FBI only got after the attack. So the question becomes, was Robinson acting alone, or was someone feeding him guidance? Someone telling him where to go? Someone ensuring that he stayed on track? Because the digital footprint doesn't show confusion. It shows purpose. It shows planning. It shows someone who wasn't wandering. He was more like hunting. So this is why Patel keeps saying the investigation is ongoing. Not because they don't know who pulled the trigger, but because they still don't know who whispered in the shooter's ear. So now let's move to one of the most explosive parts of this entire case, the text messages. So these are the ones between Tyler Robinson and his roommate, Lance Twiggs. These messages instantly went viral, not because they were incriminating, but because they sounded wrong. Like they read like a script, not like a conversation, if you understand what I mean. They read more like somebody's trying to create a narrative rather than just two people reacting naturally. Millions of Americans, they looked at those messages and they said outright, these look fake. Drop a fake if you think that those messages were fake yourself. And honestly, the doubt is understandable. I mean, the phrasing is a little bizarre. The conversation is a little bit too neat. The roommate's replies sound almost coached. And in a political climate where fabricated evidence has already been exposed in multiple high-profile cases nationwide, the public is primed to question anything that feels a little bit too polished. You know what I mean? But then Patel, he stepped in and his answer was revealing. He didn't defend the authenticity with passion. He didn't insist that the messages were ironclad. Instead, he said prosecutors wouldn't use anything that was iffy because it would destroy their case. That's true, but it's also not the same thing as saying that they've proven the messages are legitimate either. The public doesn't doubt because they're conspiratorial. They doubt because the evidence feels a little bit too convenient and because trust in institutions has already essentially been shattered. And that tension is not going away anytime soon. So next we need to confront the angle that the mainstream media has been desperately trying to bury, the pre-attack comments from members of the trans community. Now, Patel confirmed and investigators found posts before the assassination suggesting something big was coming. And after Charlie Kirk was murdered, well, the same accounts posted, and there it is. That's not rumor. That's not speculation. That is direct from the investigative pipeline. So why is that significant? Because it reveals that Robinson wasn't just like connected to an online radicalized identity subculture. He was immersed in it. He was deep in this thing, balls deep, as some people say. Patel even acknowledged that Robinson has a relationship with someone inside the community and communications with others are being reviewed. Now, this matters for a very simple reason. If there was online chatter before this assassination, investigators must determine whether it was a prediction or inside knowledge. Does it mean the community coordinated the attack? No, it doesn't mean that necessarily. Does it mean that people in the network might have known Robinson's intentions? Oh, absolutely possible. So this is exactly why the angle terrifies federal agencies. Identity-driven extremist pockets online, they're hard to track, they're harder to infiltrate, and they're almost impossible to detect up until after violence erupts. And so this isn't about identity politics. This is about digital subcultures where ideology, isolation, and radicalization collide, often unnoticed until someone pulls a trigger. And so now we reach the part where, it's pretty much got every conservative in America on edge because Charlie Kirk's assassination isn't an isolated tragedy. It fits into a pattern. This pattern has been growing for years, a pattern that federal agencies refuse to acknowledge. Conservatives are being targeted by increasingly radicalized individuals, and the institutions that were meant to protect them are consistently missing the warning signs. I mean, how many times have churches been vandalized while the FBI shrugged their shoulders? How many conservative speakers have been threatened on campus with no arrest made? How many times have online extremists openly posted about harming right-wing figures without so much as a knock on the door? So now if you add that to a case where online chatter foreshadowed an attack, a radical subculture celebrated the outcome, and a high-profile conservative figure was murdered during a public event, this should have triggered a national alert, a full-force federal response. But instead, we saw hesitation, jurisdictional excuses, and federal agencies reacting, not preventing. So what does this signal to extremists? I think it's simple. Conservatives are soft targets. And when Patel admitted that they're still tracking leads, still examining communications, still working with local authorities, it became crystal clear that the FBI wasn't prepared, not before the attack and not after. So this wasn't just a failure. This was a warning shot to every conservative leader in America. And if there is a moment in the interview where every alarm bell should have gone off, it was right when Kash Patel said the quiet part out loud. The FBI is not leading this investigation. Utah authorities are. Now, read that again, okay, guys? The assassination of a nationally recognized conservative leader, the murder that shocked the country during Trump's first year back in office, this is being driven by a state agency while the FBI supports? This is unprecedented, folks. Patel tried to frame it as a jurisdictional formality, but the truth is obvious. Federal agencies, they have lost operational authority, coherence, or both. When an institution is confident, it takes command. If it doesn't, it defers. It doesn't wait for instructions, and it certainly doesn't downplay its role during a national crisis. Even Patel's wording betrayed the internal chaos. Delicate balance, careful coordination, making sure we don't screw up the case. Come on, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the language of a federal powerhouse. This is the language of an agency that's terrified of making another catastrophic mistake under the microscope of a Donald Trump presidency. And so this isn't a shift in jurisdiction. This is a sign of federal instability, a system that's cracking under federal distrust, political pressure, and its own past failures. And so if the FBI isn't leading, then who's really in control of America's security? Now we get to one of the most disturbing questions in this entire investigation. Did online extremists know an attack was coming before Charlie Kirk was assassinated? Because based on Patel's own statements, there were a lot of posts that were floating around in the shooter's online circles saying things like, something big is coming. And the moment Kirk was killed, those same accounts fired back, and there it is. So think about that. This wasn't some random corner of the internet celebrating violence after the fact. This was a niche, identity-driven subculture making vague predictions before the attack connected to people who had direct communications with the shooter. And so whether they knew specifics or were simply encouraging a climate of violence, the effect is the same. Extremists felt that this was inevitable, and they were ready. And so why wouldn't they be? The shooter was communicating with individuals in that community. He was immersed in digital spaces where anti-conservative rhetoric was normalized. He had personal ties to someone in that circle. If these communities saw a storm coming, the uncomfortable truth is that the federal authorities and agencies should have seen it too. That's what I'm trying to say here. But they didn't, or worse, they saw it and then they didn't act fast enough. So the question is no longer, did they know? The question is, why didn't the FBI? And so now we pull back the camera because this isn't just about Charlie Kirk. This isn't just about Candace Owens. This isn't just about Donald J. Trump. This is about confusion, gaps, or contradictions inside one investigation. This is about the state of federal law enforcement in 2025 under President Donald J. Trump. Now, for the first time in years, these agencies, they're being held accountable. Every mistake is under a spotlight. Every hesitation is questioned. Every contradiction is analyzed. Trump made it clear the moment that he returned to the Oval Office, the era of unaccountable federal power is over, and the pressure is showing. Patel's caution isn't just professional, it's systemic. The FBI knows that the public no longer trusts it. It knows conservatives believe that they've been selectively targeted, ignored, or left vulnerable. It knows the political establishment can no longer shield it from consequences. The Kirk assassination case has become a crossroads, one that forces the nation to confront these three terrifying truths. Number one, online extremist networks are growing faster than federal agencies can track. Conservatives are the primary targets of this new wave of digital radicalization. And the third thing is that federal institutions are struggling to adapt and failing where it matters the most. So here's the bigger picture. This case won't just define justice for Charlie Kirk. It will define whether America can still trust the institutions that are sworn to protect it or whether the cracks have become permanent. Hit the like button, share this video. We'll see you next time.